The bright yellow notice was still fluttering on the elderly woman's mailbox when the moving truck quietly measured the street from across the road. That was the moment I realized the letter wasn't really about her overgrown roses or the faded paint on her porch. Someone had already decided her little home was worth more than her life inside it, and they were simply waiting for her to give up. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us how powerful compassion can be. The neighborhood of Willow Creek had always been the kind of place where children rode bicycles on wide sidewalks and neighbors waved while watering their gardens. It wasn't a wealthy community when it had first been built decades earlier, but over the years property values climbed until modest homes suddenly became worth fortunes. Expensive cafes replaced family diners, luxury SUVs appeared in driveways, and developers began circling the neighborhood like hawks searching for easy prey. Among all the renovated houses stood one tiny white cottage with peeling shutters and an old maple tree shading its front yard. The garden was filled with wildflowers that never seemed arranged but somehow always looked beautiful. Every morning, the woman who lived there carefully watered each bloom with a dented metal watering can that had clearly survived many decades. Her name was Marjorie Ellison. She was 83 years old, walked slowly with a carved wooden cane, and smiled at everyone who passed her gate. I had moved next door only 6 months earlier after accepting a teaching position at the local middle school. My name was Grant Holloway, and I had chosen Willow Creek because it seemed peaceful after years of living in crowded apartments. I quickly discovered that Marjorie knew every family history on the street. She remembered birthdays, anniversaries, the names of dogs that had passed away years earlier, and the children who had grown up and moved across the country. She carried memories the way others carried photographs. She never complained about her aching knees or the loneliness that followed her after her husband passed away nearly 15 years before. Instead, she baked bread for new neighbors, left handwritten encouragement cards in mailboxes when someone seemed sad, and somehow managed to make every person feel like they belonged. One sunny Tuesday morning, I noticed the yellow notice attached to her mailbox while returning from work. Marjorie stood on her porch reading it with trembling hands. Her smile was gone. The watering can rested forgotten beside the steps. The letter claimed she had violated several homeowners association regulations. Her lawn was uneven. Her fence required repairs. Her porch paint had faded below community standards. She had 30 days to complete expensive improvements or face escalating fines. None of it made sense. The same fence had stood there for years. The flowers everyone admired apparently counted as landscaping violations. Even the old birdhouse her late husband had built was suddenly listed as an unauthorized structure. Over the next week another notice arrived. Then another. Each demanded more money than Marjorie could possibly afford on her modest retirement income. She quietly stopped buying fresh flowers and canceled the grocery delivery she had used for years. One afternoon I noticed she was carrying only canned soup and bread from the store instead of the fresh fruit she usually loved. When I offered to help repair her fence, she thanked me with watery eyes but admitted the fines had already become larger than the repairs themselves. Every payment she made seemed to produce another violation. The situation felt wrong. One afternoon while mowing my lawn, I noticed several well-dressed strangers walking slowly around Marjorie's property, taking photographs from the sidewalk and pointing toward the house. They smiled when they saw me watching but quickly walked away. Later that same day, a luxury real estate sign appeared 2 streets away announcing a future gated development called Maple Heights Estates. That name stayed in my mind. Curiosity turned into concern, and concern became determination. I attended the next homeowners association meeting expecting to hear reasonable explanations. Instead, I found polished presentations about improving property values and maintaining neighborhood standards. When Marjorie's address appeared on a slideshow listing unresolved violations, the board members discussed her house as though no human being actually lived there. One member casually mentioned that foreclosure due to unpaid HOA fines was unfortunate but necessary for protecting community investments. Investment. That single word revealed everything. Marjorie's home wasn't being protected. It was being targeted. Over the following days I searched public property records during my lunch breaks. The pattern slowly emerged. 3 elderly homeowners living alone had received nearly identical violation notices within the past 2 years. All 3 eventually lost their homes after fines accumulated beyond their ability to pay. Within months, each property had quietly been purchased by the same development company through different holding corporations. Marjorie's cottage sat directly between those 3 properties. Without it, the developer would own an entire block. The HOA president happened to work as a consultant for one of the companies involved. The pieces fit together with frightening precision. I shared my findings with several longtime neighbors. At first they couldn't believe it. Willow Creek had always trusted its homeowners association. But as documents circulated and more records surfaced, disbelief slowly transformed into outrage. People remembered receiving strange purchase offers after neighbors had moved away. Others recalled aggressive inspectors suddenly appearing without warning. Stories that once seemed unrelated suddenly formed a much larger picture. Marjorie never asked anyone to fight for her. In fact, she seemed embarrassed by the attention. She insisted everyone had their own lives and worries. She repeatedly thanked people for caring while quietly preparing herself to leave the only home she had ever truly known. One afternoon I found her carefully wrapping old family photographs in newspaper. She wasn't angry. She simply looked heartbroken. She explained that every corner of the house carried memories. The hallway where her daughter had learned to walk. The kitchen where birthday cakes had been baked every year. The porch where she and her husband watched spring arrive beneath the maple tree. A house, she said softly, was never just wood and bricks. It became a witness to love. Watching her pack those memories into cardboard boxes awakened something throughout the neighborhood. The retired firefighter across the street repaired her porch free of charge. A college student repainted her fence between classes. Local gardeners restored every flower bed. Children collected litter, trimmed bushes, and planted colorful flowers around her walkway. Within 3 days the property looked more beautiful than ever. Yet another violation notice still appeared. This time it claimed the mailbox color violated neighborhood regulations. People finally understood. Compliance had never been the goal. Removal had been. The story spread beyond Willow Creek after one resident contacted a local newspaper. Reporters arrived during broad daylight to interview neighbors standing beside Marjorie's garden. Television cameras captured volunteers working together while attorneys examined property records. State investigators soon opened an inquiry into questionable foreclosure practices connected to multiple homeowners associations. The developer denied wrongdoing. The HOA insisted every action followed official guidelines. But documents continued appearing. Emails surfaced discussing acquisition strategies. Financial records revealed undisclosed business relationships. Meeting minutes mysteriously disappeared. The pressure mounted every day. Throughout it all, Marjorie remained remarkably gentle. She refused to celebrate anyone else's embarrassment. She simply hoped the truth would help others avoid similar pain. Weeks later an emergency community meeting filled the neighborhood recreation hall. Every chair was occupied. People stood along the walls because there was no remaining space. Independent investigators presented their findings. Conflict of interest violations. Selective enforcement. Improper financial disclosures. Questionable foreclosure recommendations. The board members resigned one after another before the meeting even concluded. Legal action followed quickly. Outstanding fines against Marjorie and several other homeowners were permanently cancelled. The development company withdrew its expansion plans. New community leadership was elected with transparent oversight and resident participation. Justice had finally arrived. But the greatest moment came several days later beneath the old maple tree. Neighbors organized a daytime gathering without telling Marjorie exactly why. Families filled her front yard carrying homemade food, folding chairs, flowers, and handwritten letters. Children presented drawings of her cottage surrounded by blooming gardens. Former neighbors returned from nearby towns after hearing her story on the news. One by one they shared memories. A young mother remembered receiving meals after her difficult pregnancy. An elderly widower recalled Marjorie mowing his lawn when he injured his back years earlier. A firefighter remembered the handwritten encouragement she had mailed after losing a fellow crew member. A teacher described anonymous classroom supplies that had quietly appeared each September for struggling students. Almost nobody had known she was responsible. She had spent decades planting kindness without expecting recognition. Now the harvest surrounded her. Marjorie sat quietly beneath the maple tree wiping away tears while looking at faces representing nearly every generation of Willow Creek. She had believed she was growing old alone. Instead, she discovered she had quietly built an entire family. As autumn approached, the community established a volunteer program helping elderly homeowners with maintenance, repairs, and paperwork so no one would ever again face impossible legal notices without support. The Homeowners Association itself transformed from an organization focused on penalties into one centered on assistance. Neighbors began checking on one another more often. Children learned that communities become strongest not through perfect houses but through compassionate hearts. Months later I watched Marjorie once again carrying her old watering can through the garden. The flowers seemed brighter somehow, though perhaps it was simply because hope has a way of changing how everything looks. She moved slowly as always, but there was peace in every step. The yellow notices were gone. The moving truck never returned. The little white cottage remained exactly where it belonged beneath the faithful maple tree. Sometimes people believe courage always arrives with loud speeches and dramatic heroes. But I learned something different from watching one quiet woman refuse to let bitterness replace kindness. The greatest victories are often won by ordinary people who choose compassion when fear tells them to surrender. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us whether you've ever seen a community come together to protect someone in need, or share the lesson this story reminded you to never forget. Marjorie lived many more joyful years in the home filled with the memories she had spent a lifetime creating. Every spring the neighborhood gathered beneath the maple tree for a community picnic, celebrating not a legal victory but the simple truth that homes are built with love long before they are built with lumber. The garden continued blooming through every season. Children still waved as they rode past her gate, and visitors often wondered why one small cottage seemed to shine brighter than every expensive house surrounding it. The answer could never be measured in property values or market prices. It was the light left behind by a generous heart that had quietly changed countless lives, and by a community that finally remembered that protecting one another is the greatest investment anyone can ever make. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that when kindness stands together, even the smallest home can become the strongest place in the world.